Welcome back, friends, to The Pulse. I am David Harris Jr. Well, as the country celebrated America's 250th birthday with fireworks in the sky and burgers on the grill, federal law enforcement marked the occasion by taking dangerous criminals off the streets of Chicago. 11 agencies joined forces for a historic crackdown that resulted in nearly 500 arrests. Federal officials say the multi-agency operation could serve as a model for tackling crime in violent urban areas all across the country. Our crime correspondent Jason Matera has the story.
The federal law enforcement apparatus is set up to play defense, and right now we're playing offense.
And that offense came with a name, Operation New Dawn. Described as an unprecedented partnership, it brought together 11 federal agencies with one mission: to make Chicago and the surrounding area safe again, in special recognition of the nation's 250th birthday. We spoke with the FBI official who helped lead the effort, Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Robert Wizorek.
These are homicides. These are narcotics trafficking. These are people with cartel ties. These are the individuals that are driving violence in our neighborhood on a day-to-day basis.
One of the most dangerous offenders arrested was Gary Llewellyn, also known as Lil Bird. Authorities say he and his crew carried out a string of brazen armed carjackings throughout the city. Llewellyn had been hiding out for 3 years.
These carjackings were particularly heinous and egregious. They were very violent.
Another apprehended fugitive was William Arzadi, who was charged with beating a man to death with a baseball bat. An Illinois judge allowed him to post bond, but when his trial date arrived, Arzadi was nowhere to be found. He was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, all while remaining on the run. But that run is now over. He was tracked down in Mexico. In total, the Justice Department says that nearly 500 people were arrested and scores of illegal guns were taken off the street during this 60-day operation. And according to U.S. Attorney Andrew Boutros, many of the offenders swept up in Operation New Dawn had already been in custody, only to be released by local judges.
What you see are people who are violent offenders, repeat violent offenders, that the Cook County judges decide to release on pretrial condition.
Now the feds say they have an answer to that catch and release style of progressive justice. Overwhelm it with manpower.
But when you get all of these agencies together and have a cohesive team approach to combating violent crime, it makes a huge impact.
Jason Matera, thank you for that. Joining me now, economist and gun rights advocate, Dr. John Lott Jr. John, thank you for joining the Pulse this evening. Now, 500 arrests marks a major headline for the holiday weekend, but the real test is what happens next. Are local and federal prosecutors equipped to handle this sudden massive influx of cases, or is there risk of the bottleneck happening in the court system?
Yeah, I mean, the U.S. attorneys around the country have really stepped up their game. I mean, look at Washington, D.C. During the Biden administration, because the U.S. attorneys are appointed by the president. During the Biden administration, the U.S. attorney there refused to bring charges against 67% of the people who had been arrested by police there. Under Judge Jean Pirro, that's down to 4%. Only 4% of those who are arrested aren't being charged with crimes. That's a huge difference, and you see it across the country. You see increases in arrests. The FBI last year had twice as many arrests as they had in 2024. All these things add up. Plus, one of the important things for reducing crime, and the fact that this guy was in Mexico is relevant to this, is crime by illegal aliens. 70% of those who were deported under the Trump administration this term had criminal records. But it's even more than that. It's the ones you haven't even caught. They don't want to get deported. How do they keep from getting deported? Because they know if they get picked up by the police and arraigned in a local county courthouse, there's a good chance that ICE will be there to go and pick them up. So how do they avoid that? Well, they want to keep off of police radar. And how do they keep off of police radar? Is they stop committing crimes right now. And so I think there's a real understanding why this last year we had the lowest murder rate ever recorded in U.S. history. The federal government has recorded crime data going back to 1900, 125 years. The lowest previous murder rate we ever had was 4.5 per 100,000. And it's pretty clear that this last year it looks like we're slightly below 4 per 100,000. That's a huge change. It's a big change from what it was in just 2024. And we don't know what the total violent crime rates are going to be until September this year, but I'm willing to bet we're going to see huge drops across the board in total violent crimes.
Yeah, I bet we will. And again, it's because there's a new commander in the Oval Office. Now, John, I know you wrote that Americans' right to self-defense shouldn't end at the state line. And it's true. I firmly believe that. You know, if I drive across state lines, my driver's license doesn't just suddenly become invalid just because the local traffic laws change. Yet, when it comes to a constitutionally protected right, like defending my family, a law-abiding citizen can cross an invisible border and instantly become a convicted felon. So break down why national concealed carry reciprocity is the only common sense solution to this legal absurdity.
Right. Well, look, I mean, if you're a woman who's driving alone across the country and your car breaks down, or if you're a truck driver who is carrying valuable cargo and has to worry about your items being stolen, you know, these guys are real victims of crime. And if you drive through a state like Illinois or California or New York or New Jersey or some of these other states that's there, you risk becoming a criminal. And if you're disarmed going through those, you may be disarmed on your way to those states and from those states, not just being disarmed in those areas. And look, the Trump administration's already made some changes or in the process through the ATF. So in the past, if you were to drive through one of these Democratic states and stop for lunch or get gasoline or stay in a hotel overnight, even though your final destination was someplace else and you're just briefly staying there, you have a number of cases where those states would arrest people and charge them with felonies for violating those state laws. And what's happened is the Trump administration has new rules that they put forward that say, look, as long as your final destination is someplace else, if you're just stopping temporarily in the place there, you are protected. And that's a major change. But still more needs to be done with regard to reciprocity. I mean, as you mentioned, if you're driving and you're in a state that says no turn on red, even if you're allowed to turn right on red in your home state, you have to obey the local rules that are there. And a concealed carry permit would allow people to be able to go and carry and protect themselves as they travel across the country.
Yeah, well, the media claims that America is the most dangerous place in the developed world, but I know you've said that countries like Canada and Australia actually have higher rates of violent crime and assault. So how has the media warped these facts, and what does that
Right.
real data show?
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. Look, a lot of the media, all they look at is crimes reported to police. But people have to understand that most crimes aren't reported to police. Only about 43% of violent crimes in the United States are reported to police, only about 30% of property crimes. So let me give you a simple example. In Australia, only about 19% of rapes and sexual assaults, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and I think this is high, are reported to police, only 19%. In the United States, it's 45%. So even if the true rape and sexual assault rate was identical in both the United States and Australia, if you just looked at reported crimes, it would make it look like the United States was much worse in terms of rapes and sexual assaults, more than twice the amount. So what we do in the United States, the Bureau of Justice Statistics has what they call the National Crime Victimization Survey, where they survey 240,000 people a year in order to get a measure of total violent crime, not just those that are reported to police. Australia and Canada are a couple of the countries that have similar surveys. And if you take rape and sexual assaults and look at totals, Australia's rape and sexual assault rate is 3 times higher than the rate in the United States. And overall, their violent crime rate is twice, their aggravated assault rate is twice, their burglary rate's 2.5 times. Canada is almost 3 times higher total violent crime than what we have in the United States. And, if you just look at reported crime, it makes it look like the United States is worse. But what people don't realize is that, they're missing most crimes there. And the reason why we may have a lot of problems with our crime in the United States, but it's much worse in other countries. People don't report crimes if they don't think criminals are going to be caught and punished. In Canada, for example, if you look at the rate that crimes are reported to police compared to total violent crime, only about 10% are reported to police.
Wow.
And people just don't have confidence in the police in many of these other countries, so they don't report them.
And I bet you the media knows this, and they just don't care. They don't report on it, but they want to report on it. The legacy liberal media, anyway. We obviously report the truth and the facts here on Newsmax and Newsmax 2. All the time I have, Dr. John Lott Jr., God bless you, brother. Thanks for joining the Pulse tonight.